Welcome back, Global War 1939. We just finished off round 5, so let's take a look here. All right, so for the Germans, they made a couple more pushes into Russia. The Russians had a couple stacks of infantry here in these two territories. Leningrad was vacant, and the Russians did have 3 units in the first territory of Finland. The Germans were able to counterattack utilizing their transports, getting artillery and infantry from Western Germany, transfer them up, and taking out those 3 units. They did use their Air Force, which is for the first turn for the Germans, their Air Force is vital in taking the territories that they need. And then after that, they usually park them in Western Germany. Don't use them again, but have a deterrent for this sea zone to pretty much preventing any British from coming up and attacking Norway. But in order to get all the objectives that they needed for this turn, they did use their Air Force, which is good. Use both bombers, as well as 2 infantry and 2 artillery to remove the Russians from Finland. As you can see, they used some armor and infantry that they had from Hungary and in Poland. They also used their tactical dive bombers in those battles. And pretty much all the Air Force is up in Finland, which is on this card here. So they've got their bombers and their fighters, veteran fighters, and then their tacticals are in eastern Poland as well as their air transport. They did take out Kiev. They moved in a couple of Mark 4s from Romania that they purchased the turn before, and brought up some infantry that was in Ukraine itself. But that big stack went up to Olarkursk and fought the Russians, the main Russian army that they had there. So this is what's currently left. Pretty much all their infantry are gone. They did lose a couple of mechs as well. But their armor core is fully intact. Their artillery are fully intact. They just got 1 SS infantry left. So do they wait to build up their infantry corps again, or just go in and attack Russia now? Pretty much they'll have to take all their hits on their artillery, heavy artillery, mechanized, and hopefully survive with their armor. The Russians currently in Moscow. They got heavy artillery, light bomber, fighter, quite a number of infantry, well over 10. They got 4 of their elite infantry and 3 KV-2s. Down in Stalingrad, they got about 5 infantry and artillery, and they also even got a partisan. So what ended up happening as the Germans came up to attack, they used 1 tank to blitz through eastern Ukraine. They didn't leave a unit behind, knowing that a partisan would pop up, which is fine. Russia gets a free infantry. Germany gets basically $2 free from the last turn and this turn, and then it'll turn back to Soviet. That's fine, I guess. The British did make another landing into Normandy, only this 1 territory this time as opposed to 2. So the Germans will have to counterattack that again, reestablishing not just the French territory, but also getting back their $5 bonus. But these 2 attacks weren't done in vain. Yes, it kind of looks like they didn't really gain anything out of it. They just lost a lot of units. True, but the Germans lost a bunch as well. And it forces the Germans' hands, instead of just constantly building up and have this massive war machine in France, they're kind of thinned out a little bit. But the Germans are not really worried too much. They can see that the British in their home island don't really have a lot to throw back at it in a 3rd wave. They got a couple of specialized artillery, 7 infantry. What really helps out the British is they can make a landing, make a beachhead, and then hold it. Then they get their fighters in there for defenses. That's where they really need were what they should have done, or want to do anyways. So the Germans are trying to hold that to prevent that. Once Russia's cleaned up, then the Germans' focus will be on the British Isles, and they'll put more of their production into the west, as right now most of it's going to the east like it should be. But they got quite a big army. They even got a follow-up, this battle group down here in Romania, Ukraine. They're not even going to be able to assist into Moscow. Not really. They're too far behind. So they're just going. Their task is going to go straight to Stalingrad and take out the Caucasus and all those territories for all that money. And then up here, Olar-Kursk, these 3 armor will go into Moscow, and all the infantry that are behind will just clean up the territories and prevent any partisans. So that's pretty much the job for the Germans. For the British in the Atlantic, they do have a task force. They really need Gibraltar back. It prevents the Italians from getting a small bonus, and it also allows the British to enter the sea or the Mediterranean. They do have a sizable fleet ready to go. So if they could get a second fleet in here and really hammer out the Italians. But the Italians have seen this coming. They purchased a second battleship the previous turn and an aircraft carrier this turn. So you know the Italian economy is doing quite well if they're buying aircraft carriers. And they're maxing out their production down in Africa. They really don't have anything home. They got 2 airbornes, air transport, and a bomber. They got really nothing to defend with at all. Their entire army, military force is in the Mediterranean, Africa. The Americans are finally in the war, so all their production facilities now bumped from a 3 to a 10. So instead of only building 9 units a turn, now they can build up to 30, provided that they have the money for it. So they took advantage of the transports now being $1 cheaper, bought a stack of those, bought some more land-based units to help out the British in some landings into France. So we'll see how all this plays out. They did go ahead and activate Mexico, and they also activated Brazil. You should always activate Brazil because it's free $4, right? You do get a coastal battleship, a free transport, and 3 free infantry. So it's nothing really, it's not the biggest military in the game, but it's nothing to sniff away at. And the real value is the $4 because typically, in most games, these 2 territories fall to Japan. So now your income is at -3 right away. But now you take out Brazil, Mexico, now you're +2. So it works out. So yeah, you should do that. Set it up. Make sure you have a transport to drop off. I usually bring out 2 transports with 4 units, a mix of artillery, infantry. After they're done, because if you bring out 4, you can activate all 4 territories at once instead of 2 and then waiting the next turn. And then with the free transport, then that way you got 3 transports. You can come up and load them off in Africa to help out in other parts of the map. So they're just not stuck there, but the real value is the income, right? FEC, just another build-up. FEC is losing a big chunk of their income. Convoyed. They lost this story, this one, and that one, pretty much on turn 1. And this has been in Japanese hands for the last couple turns. So the income that FEC has had has quite diminished compared to everyone else. They're pretty much on the same par as China, kind of. So they really need to they really need to take this territory out. Something needs to be done if FEC is going to do anything in this game, in this war. There's no real point of having an ally It's not really doing anything. Yes, it's creating a wall, it's holding or pinning all these units down. As long as this stack is here, this has to stay here. So they really can't move out one or the other. If they want to get away from the situation, one has to attack the other. But up in China, the Japanese forces are doing well. Took out another chunk of Chinese infantry. So the Chinese kind of backed off a little bit. They do have a couple of armor, a couple of their cavalry are still in play. Quite a number of infantry. They did lose their fighter a while ago. Communist China took a big beating. They lost their artillery and quite a few infantry up in this battle. The Japanese were tired of Communist China taking out their territories. So they kind of pushed them back a little bit. They're only down to 4 infantry. So not looking good for them. Japan did build a second Amato battleship, put down some more cavalry units, some more artillery and mechanized infantry. They're at the point of the game where these two production facilities, they're pretty much going to spawn a cavalry, a mechanized, and an artillery every turn now. It does give them all 3 units to 2 movement, so you can get on the front lines much faster. Earlier on in the game, you can just get away with infantry because the enemy is right on those borders. Now that they're getting pushed back a little bit, you want those units to be purchased and get on the front line as quick as possible. You don't want to give your enemy a breather round, right? Waiting for your reinforcements to catch up. Philippines did fall. The Japanese came down with quite a few, brought down 3 infantry, an armor, brought down a couple fighters, and 3 bombardments. The fighters and the bombardments were completely useless. They just had to rely on the armor and the infantry. They did pull it off with only 1 unit. They did lose all their infantry. Guam was a walk-on. The Japanese did retake this. That was a walk-on, and they were managed. There was an artillery unit there, did get hit by the bombardments, so that was an easy battle for them. And then they pushed forward and brought down some subs here, and destroyers going to challenge the Australians. 2 destroyers, and then pretty much blockade this port. We're at the point where Australia is only making $9 right now. They will lose that territory, so they'll be down to 8. Pretty much all they can do is build one destroyer a turn, and if you're facing 2 subs and 4 destroyers, well, you're not going to get very far. These 2 destroyers did sneak away on their last turn. They're going to try to free up some of these convoy boxes. As Japan don't really have a lot in the Indian Ocean, just got 2 destroyers here, so if they can pick these off, they'll probably be recaptured maybe, but it'll give FEC some breathing room. And for the rest of this turn, like I said, they did buy an Amato. They redistributed their fleet around a little bit, mostly to cover off the transports. They weren't really in range to be sunk by anything, but just in case, they backed them up, bringing some escort vessels around. And then the plan for the Japanese fleet is all this right here is going to amalgamate into one. So it'll give them 2 carriers, 3 battleships, 2 Amatos, 6 destroyers, or cruisers, sorry, and 6 destroyers. The transports will probably head back to Japan. Japan will load up with infantry-based units and probably make a run at Hawaii. But first, the Japanese Navy does need to clear out the American Navy, or the Americans can attack the Japanese and take them out. So there's going to be a clash pretty soon. Capital ship counts. Japan is pretty, they're ahead. Carrier-wise, they're the same. They both got 2 each. But the Americans got 3 battleships, but the Japanese got 2 extra models that the Americans don't. Even support vessels, I'm pretty sure the Japanese are ahead. So the Americans do need to put more income into this side of the map. But it's kind of hard when you're trying to take out Germany and the British are begging for your help as well. Yes, you as the U.S. you make well over $100, but it doesn't go far when you're trying to take on these countries. But that's really it for this turn. There was a couple of clashes, a couple of keys. I wouldn't say, I don't know about key, but standard battles. Japan now has that bonus, so they got 2 bonuses now. Pushing back China a little bit, keeping FEC entrenched. In Africa, the British here are entrenched. They could push out the Italian armies, pretty much amalgamated here in Alexandria. They got a couple medium tanks, light tanks, artillery, heavy artillery, for their elite infantry, and an okay number of infantry for, I believe. And the Italians are pushing out west. They got a couple of artillery, infantry, light armor. So they're going to push this way, take these territories out. They did get a couple of purchase a few cavalry for themselves. So that's not, but their biggest purchase was, of course, their aircraft carrier. They did have their fighters that were already here from the beginning of the game, so they just flew them up. They didn't actually buy those. So the Italian aircraft carriers are actually pretty cheap compared to other countries. It's only $16. So yes, it is a big purchase, but they can spare it, at least for one turn. Don't expect them to build an aircraft carrier every turn now. But, I'm pretty impressed with their capital ships. They got 3 now, so we'll see how that goes. The British here, they got a carrier, 2 battleships, a few cruisers, a couple destroyers, escort carrier. So this is a pretty decent fleet as well. And they got 2 more battleships here, a few more destroyers. So if those 2 fleets can link up, they should be able to make a run at the Italians. We'll see how it all goes. And these destroyers and cruisers stay behind to protect those transports. All right. So it's the end of this round, and we'll continue on with round 6 momentarily. All right, thank you. Have a great day.